Republicans initially said they did not have the votes in Indiana to redraw their districts, but Governor Mike Braun sent out this statement today calling a special session in Indianapolis, laying out exactly what he's doing. So the special session will deal with redistricting and federal and state tax issues. Now, here's what's interesting. He said, quote, "I'm calling a special legislative session to protect Hoosiers from efforts in other states that seek to diminish their voice in Washington and ensure the representation in Congress is fair. I'm also asking the legislature to conform Indiana's tax code with new federal tax provisions to ensure stability and certainty for taxpayers and tax preparers for 2026 filings." Well, that's kind of interesting because it was Republicans and Donald Trump who actually started this war when it comes to racist gerrymandering. It started in Texas. California responded. Republicans got pissed because they thought California should just be quiet and not do anything. And so then Virginia said, we got you. You got Republicans in Ohio, in Florida, Georgia. They're all trying to gerrymander. They're even talking about trying to get rid of the only black seat in South Carolina. Now, we already saw what Missouri did. They got rid of Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver's seat. These things are going on. Now, there are a lot of folks who are saying, well, this stuff is not right. It's unfair in that, you know what, this is going to hurt overall. But the reality is you have to fight fire with fire. Republicans are scared to death that they're going to lose anywhere from 10 to 12 seats next year. As a result, they said, hey, we got to sit here and we got to take as many seats as we can to offset the losing of those seats. They know they've screwed up with their policies. You take Iowa, for example. Oh, they've gone for Donald Trump twice. Their economy is in tatters because of his tariff battle. Yeah, that's all on him. So all this is happening. Then, of course, you got that Supreme Court case, that Callis case, we'll deal with that later, to Louisiana, where that decision, and based upon how their questionings went, we know how they're going to rule, that decision could wipe out another 12 to 19, upwards of 30 seats all across the South, mostly black, but also involving some Latinos. So what we're dealing with is a massive realignment that could keep Democrats in the minority for the next 50 years and solidify Republican rule in the House. And you already see what's happening with the Senate. Joining us right now, Cliff Albright, co-founder of Black Voters Matter. Cliff, glad to have you here. You know, we always talk about elections have consequences. Mm-hmm. And we warn people repeatedly, hey, if they get in, mm-hmm. here's what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And all of these things are happening. So all of these people who are running their mouths are going like, oh, I can't believe they're doing this. Why? They told you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they told us exactly what they were going to do. Kamala told us exactly what they were going to do. We at Black Voters Matter and a whole bunch of organizations, you told everybody what they were going to do, and that's exactly what they're doing. And that's just what you said is exactly what the goal is to create a permanent one-party state. If they're able to do this, and keep in mind that this isn't even just at the congressional level, right? If they get rid of the Voting Rights Act, not only can they attack all those congressional seats, at least 19, and like you said, possibly even up to 33, but this means that they can do it up and down the ballot. They can redistrict and gerrymander and eliminate us at the state legislatures, at the county commission level, at the city council level, all these school boards, every issue that we deal with, yep. that we value, from housing to environment, to, you know, jobs, you name it, on all these issues, we would lose out.
It's to wipe out black leadership.
It's completely wipe out black leadership and to give black communities no voice.
Right, and I keep telling people, this is about defunding black America. Right. It is attacking the political infrastructure, mm-hmm. it's attacking academic, it's mm-hmm. attacking social, it's attacking nonprofit. That's what they're doing right now.
That's right, and we need, you know, the good news is this, we have some tools that we can use, right? We know what California is doing with Prop 50, which is not guaranteed, right? So if you know somebody in California, you need to be talking to them, making sure that they're going to go out and vote. We see what Virginia is doing, right? The Republican governor over there, Youngkin, loses his mind, all upset, like clutching the pearls because the Virginia Democrats decided that they would go after maybe 2, maybe even 3 seats in Virginia to counteract what's going on in Texas and Missouri and some of these other states. And so, but that's not enough, right? If they continue to push it in places like Ohio, maybe even places like Florida, then we need Maryland. You know, Governor Moore has been talking some good stuff, right? Saying that he's willing to fight fire with fire, but we need to keep the pressure on in Maryland. And we definitely need to keep the pressure on in some place like New York, where it's very difficult because of the way that their redistricting process is set up. But still, whatever power they can do, like we need them to do what Virginia did, where they found a way to say, oh, you wanted us in session and you never closed out that session, so we're going to come back and we're going to use that session, right, to push back. We need folks in New York doing the exact same thing.
You know, one of the things that I remember a number of years ago when I had my TV One show, Washington Watch, and Cornell Belcher argued that it was nonsensical. He argued that black folks should be thinking about these districts differently.
Yeah.
He said, in many of these cases, you got African Americans who are saying, hey, you know, we want more seats.
Right.
He said, but you have to understand what they're doing. He said they would love nothing more to pack as many black people as possible into congressional seats,
right,
in order to eliminate white Democrats.
Right.
Cornell argued, well, that hurts black power,
right,
because the reality is the issues that we advocate, you can be black, you can be elected, but what power do you have when you're not in the majority?
That's right.
When you're never the chair of a committee, when you're never the chair of a subcommittee. And so we're seeing that right now. So this is a story from the Bulwark where you have blacks in Maryland and Illinois who are saying, oh no, we're not interested. This is what they wrote. In a Zoom meeting with Jeffries last week, members of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus made clear that they weren't interested in redrawing their state's map if it meant diluting the share of black voters in districts that have historically been represented by black members. Given that it would be nearly impossible to do a redraw without moving voters out of these districts, it was interpreted as a pretty clear no. When I asked, this is Sam Stein, it's a piece, when I asked State Senator Willie Preston, the Senate chair of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, whether he was risking disempowering Democrats nationally in order for black Democrats to hold onto power in Illinois, he said he didn't give it, actually this is a paid piece, he basically said he didn't care about helping Democrats who wants to protect black people.
Right.
Okay, I get your point, but you actually are not protecting black people if that's your stance, if you're always going to be in the minority. Right,
because there's black folks in your state, in Illinois, who won't have health care, who won't have access to education, who won't have access to housing, who won't be able to deal with police violence. And so by not protecting us nationally, you are hurting your own community, even in your own state. Now, it's a real issue. I don't want to ignore that issue, because in California, that's part of what we're actually seeing with that Prop 50, right? Which is, in order to add those 5 districts, they had to move around some stuff. And as a result, some of the black districts may not, you know, they'll probably stay black, but they may not be as black, right? And we have to have a conversation. I think what you're getting at is, look, you know, they can't all be 70% black or 65% black, right? If it goes from 65 to 60 and we're able to protect the country and doing so, our communities across the country, then that's something that we need to talk about. But the other issue is this. We got to have a larger discussion around this entire redistricting process, right? You know, I know you remember, just as I do, in '93 when Clinton won and he nominated Lonnie Guinier to be in the Department of Justice. And then he pulled her nomination because he said that some of her ideas were dangerous. And I remember being like a college student at the time. I said, well, wait a minute. If they're saying this system's so dangerous, I want to know more about what she was talking about. She was talking about proportional representation. And she saw it as a way to deal with the very fundamental problem that we have. Because what she said was, in this country, or in any country, as long as you are a minority group in a simple majority rule, first to the post, single member districts, that you are always going to be in a bad situation, right? And so we got to start having some more. We got to fight for the Voting Rights Act because there's a bunch of stuff that we need to protect that the Voting Rights Act deals with. But we also got to start having some conversations around what other structural solutions do we have to make sure that we get the representation and to deal with the issue that you're saying, that once we get that representation, that we're actually able to govern and rule and to pass good policy.
Of course, this was when Lana Guinier was actually appointed. She passed away 3 years ago. And see, what I am trying to walk people through is an understanding of power.
That's right.
And again, then you get these people, they're like, well, you're just being a shield for the Democratic Party. Here's a perfect example. Yesterday, my man Keenan Towns had a golf tournament for his foundation at Langston Golf Course in D.C. And then they had a community picnic on the driving range afterwards. So backyard band is playing, and there's this brother who's there. He's an Omega. And so he comes up to me and he says, yeah, I'm an Omega, got his gear on. I'm one of those black men who voted for Trump. I said, okay. So he starts telling me about, Kamala, she really Indian. She wasn't black. She didn't claim black. And I was like, well, that's a lie.
Right.
So he starts going on and on, this nonsense. And he starts talking about, we got to have, FBA specific policies. And so he's going, and I heard you, and I said, okay, you do know, you are aware you cannot pass black specific. Well, no. The Asians got a bill. I said, did they really? No, I didn't heard that. I said, really? Right. I said, what did the Asians get? Well, the Asians got a hate crime law. That's a lie. I said, it's a lie. I said, what was the name of the bill?
Right.
He couldn't even name the bill.
Right.
I said, did you go through the data? I said, oh, did you go pull the hate crimes bill that was passed when black churches were being burned down? I said, was that bill specific to only black churches? No. Right. It was churches, mosques, synagogues, houses of worship. Right. I said, now, in the summary, it talked about black churches being targeted. Okay. I said, dude, you know what the hell you're talking about? So then he's going on and on and on. And no, I said, okay. I said, let me ask a question. I said, you got any respect for Shirley Chisholm? I said, she wasn't FBA. I said, oh, Harry Belafonte? Not FBA. I said, Malcolm X's mama, where was she born?
Right.
I started naming all these. I said, Sidney Poitier. Right. I said, now I'm confused with all. I said, he's like, well, I look at my life, and there was nothing in my life that got better on the Democrats. So I said, why did I give this man a chance? And I was like, oh, okay. And so while he's sitting there, so I'm sitting there hitting this fool on policy. Right. And he is absolutely ignorant on policy. And he's sitting here going and all this sort of stuff. And I start bringing him housing. Well, as I'm talking, a Joe Asamoah walks by. I said, oh, speaking of housing, this sister worked in the hood under Biden-Harris. And so she comes over, she was like, oh, Lord. She said, is my frat one of these I said, yep. I said, yeah, your frat brother, one of the MAGA people. Right. So then she sits here, and then she said, oh, I'm the one who wrote the HUD, racial justice policy. I said, you voted for a man who's getting rid of the policy. So I started naming all this anti-black stuff. Right. That little Omega walked away and went back and listened to the concert. And I'm like, fool, this is what I'm talking about. This is about power. Right. This is about the seizing of power. Right. And when we get caught up in, oh, you just shilling for the Democrats, no, fool. I got to look at the chessboard to go, okay, what are the issues that I care about? That's right. And if I outline 5 of them, where does the Republican Party stand versus the Democratic Party? That does not mean Democrats are perfect, but I got to be smart enough to understand that I'm going to voluntarily get my ass kicked if I don't read the board right. And I will, for all things that I claim I want, I will never get
That's right.
Because I will be out of power.
That's right. We'll be out of power, and folks who are running literally on anti-blackness, trying to erase black history, trying to erase black jobs, trying to kick black folk out of the armed services, and we know what that's all about, right? That's potential coup type stuff. But you just go down the road. They're not even trying to hide it. And what we have to recognize, going back to this redistricting discussion, is because redistricting isn't sexy. I get it, right? Don't nobody want to have a conversation, about redistricting and about gerrymandering. If you give me having a conversation about versus, or a conversation about the NBA, or a conversation about gerrymandering, I'd love to pick either one of the first two. But at the end of the day, no matter what your issue is, right? No matter who you are, even if you're the confused Omega brother that you're talking about, whatever his issue is, whatever anybody's issue is, you can't get progress on it as a black person in this country, especially right now, if we don't have a government that reflects us, where we don't have any representation.
My problem while he was running his mouth was, everything I mentioned anti-black.
Right.
I ain't know that.
Right.
I said, what the hell are you then watching?
Right.
I said, you voted for a guy claiming, well, I'm gonna give him a shot.
Right.
I said, and here you're standing before me,
right,
telling me how you want this foundational black Americans agenda, and you literally know nothing about I said all of the anti-black stuff. I brought up, they want to get rid of the federal DBA program, contracts. I said they rule against Lowndes County, the settlement regarding sewage being backed up in yards. I said they call it illegal DEI. I said Cancer Alley in Louisiana, pull out of the lawsuit. The housing lawsuit in Texas dealing with a racist HOA, pull out. I went boom, 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 boom. I said, so now I don't understand. How are you advocating for a foundational black American agenda when you have somebody who is consistently anti-black, and you proudly say you and Omega who voted for Donald Trump?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's just. This
was just yesterday.
Yeah. And he's not alone, unfortunately, right? Because you got a lot of folks who claim to be pro-black, but they really are anti-black immigrant more than they are pro-black. Right, and a lot of times they're reflecting the same thing that white folks have done for decades and centuries. Right. In other words, I don't care how bad you make it for me, as long as you make it worse for them other folk. Right. That's what white folks. That's why you got poor white folks that are okay with their poverty, as long as they got somebody black or a community that's black that's more poor, or that has more cancer and environmental sludge or whatever. And that's the same thing that some of these black folk, right? That what they do, basically, they're not even paying attention to policies that are impacting us in our community, as long as they can see immigrant, black, Latino, or otherwise getting rounded up and deported and kidnapped and sent out the country. And so that's a conversation that we got to have in our community. The good news is, I believe that there's more of us that know the deal, right? That know that we got to that know that this administration is nothing but anti-blackness. Knowing that you got folks running around proud about being a Nazi. Young Republicans in their chat group talking about being a Nazi. The dude that was just running for, or just about to be appointed to be a judge or something, or an attorney, talking about how he's proud to be a Nazi. They are not even trying to hide it. And so again, like you say, it's about power, and we cannot use our power unless we have representation in order to be in these places to get us the policies that we need.
Questions for Cliff? I guess I'll let the Kappa go first.
Well, I wasn't a Kappa you were talking to at the golf tournament, because we ain't got no Kappas that voted for Trump.
Yes, you do.
That's a whole nother
yes,
story.
You do. Yes, you know you do.
Too. Don't start.
You know you do.
Start your shit now. There you go. Here we go.
You know I ain't lying. You know you do.
Cliff, let me get to Cliff. Cliff, love the work that you're doing. What happens when we race to the bottom? When we get done with the race to the bottom and you would not do it in 10 years, we're doing it now 5 years midway, and the Democratic states and the red states get to the bottom, then what? I mean, do we start over? Are there going to be more Republican seats than Democratic seats? I see it as a real attack on our democracy on both sides, actually, but I don't think the Democrats have much choice. But what happened? When the dust settles, what do you think's going to happen, and what's the House and Senate going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think two things, maybe even three things. I think one, I think we can look at the way that California has done it, right? Where basically they did it where it was specifically in response to Texas, right? They basically were like, look, if Texas pulls back, we'll pull back. They did it in a way that's time limited, right? So that they'll go back to their normal process at the normal time at the end of the decade. So I think that there are things that you can do even as you are fighting fire with fire, which still establishes that, look, we recognize that fundamentally we got to do all this a different kind of a way, that we do want fairness in the process and fair representation in the process. But in this moment, that we have got to do this fight, because at the end of the day, like you asked, what happens if it's a race to the bottom? If we don't do it now, there is no bottom. Right? It's a bottomless pit that we wind up finding ourselves in. And so the only way to fight it is to do what some of these states have already done and what we're encouraging even more states to do. But being clear, keeping the eyes on the prize, that fundamentally we don't want to be doing this, and that we got these other values that we want to fight for. But you can't fight for those values if, again, to Roland's point, if we ain't got no power. And if we don't have power for decades or for generations, then, we just got a principle that we want to see, but we have absolutely no way to make it be a reality.
Also, I think we have to also recognize, and this is, and I've said this for so long, how Democrats have to understand what power is and what's fair and just. So here's what I mean by that.
Yeah.
So Eric Holder and Obama, they get together and they launch this national redistricting committee. This is the website. Okay. So all they kept talking about, fair maps, fair maps, fair maps, fair maps, fair maps.
Right.
Okay. Sounds great.
Right.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
But you got one side over here who's talking about fair.
Yeah.
The other side's talking about power. So what happens? This is a story right here in Politico, why Democrats can't match Trump's gerrymander push.
Right.
So it says right here, Democrats trying to counter Donald Trump's red state gerrymander are facing a roadblock. 15 roadblocks, actually.
Yeah.
That's how many Democratic-led states have a political trifecta.
Yeah.
The same setup that helped Texas Republicans push through new maps last month.
Right.
But of those 15, only California has made a serious effort to respond in kind, and even that initiative may fail at the ballot box. Leaders in 14 other states with a Democratic governor and state legislature find themselves unable to move forward, hampered by reasons ranging from constitutional limitations, legal deadlines, and maps that can't be gerrymandered anymore. And perhaps an acknowledgement of these hurdles, Democrats have turned to the courts to try to stopping Republican efforts. So you take Colorado. Colorado would love to do this. They got a state constitution that says you can only redistrict every 10 years.
Right.
So Democrats fought for these laws to be changed to create fair maps. The commission in Michigan, Republicans fought the one in Ohio. They were like, no, we ain't having no nonpartisan committee. We gonna have a damn partisan commission.
Right.
And they completely jacked that up and took it over. Right. So the problem now is, now Obama and Holder got no choice but to back this. And this is a perfect example, again, of Democrats saying, no, let's be right. Let's be fair. Let's be just. And Republicans like, okay, that's cute. Power.
Right. They basically, the Democrats unilaterally disarmed. And this is where you find yourself.
I'm giving up my weapons.
Right.
But you get to keep, not only keep yours, you get to go acquire more.
Right. Like both of us, we got to put our knives down on 3, and you count to 3, and you put yours down, and the other dude's still holding his knife.
Well, he holding his knife, and now he done pull out a gun. And now he got a grenade. And you like, no, but we agreed to put, they like, no, you agreed to put your stuff down.
Right.
I didn't.
Now, there were black folk who tried to tell them not to do that, not the two that you mentioned, right? But there were some other black folks and black organizations that said, look, this is a bad idea. Why? Because we know the nature of the opposition that we up against. See, there's a lot of white folks that still don't understand, and some black, like the Omega dude you was talking to, that still don't understand the nature of the opposition that we up against, right? We knew that we couldn't trust them. We knew that we couldn't unilaterally disarm. Now, if you had to do the commission, you could have built some stuff into it that would have said, look, we're going to do this commission, but if these other folks start acting a fool, we've got this out that we can go to without having to do another constitutional amendment or having to go back to court. You could have built that into the system. That's how you fight for your values, but you still remain cautious and watchful, right? But we didn't do it. These states didn't do that. That's why we're having to push so hard for some of these blue states like New York and like some of those other ones to try to do whatever they can to undo and correct, even if it's temporarily, to undo and correct it, even if you're going to wind up having to go to court later.
Right.
Because that's what
right.
he does.
Again, see, that's the stupid shit I don't understand. What New York did last time, they were pleading with Hochul, yo, file the appeal.
Right.
No. You just handed them 4 or 5 seats, and what's the problem? Right now, Democrats need a net 3 seats to reclaim the majority. I'm like, you try to be fair. Screwed your party out of power.
That's right.
It makes no sense. Joy, question.
Hi, Cliff. I'm so glad to have you on tonight. So what are you all doing in terms of, to pull together a strategy here, right? And you don't have to tell me all the strategy, but what's the leadership of civil rights groups, others doing to come together and to say everything you said is right? What are we going to do about it, though?
Yeah.
And how are we going to bring in to alignment some of these legislators out there who don't see themselves as part of the problem and who are just trying to protect their own seats?
Yeah. No. Oh, and that last part. That's a whole show in and of itself. But I think there's several prongs to the strategy, right? The one hand is still to be fighting to protect the Voting Rights Act, to push back on this Calais case that the Supreme Court is hearing right now. That's how come what we did, to answer your question, one of the things we did was we took 300 folks from 8 southern states to show up at the Supreme Court on the day that they were having that hearing last week, because we didn't want that hearing to go by, this potentially historic moment to go by, and they not see that folks in the South got something to say. Because it's black voters in the South and black districts in the South that are going to be most impacted. But that wasn't just about a one-day event or just about having a rally on the steps of the Supreme Court, although that's important in of itself. It's also about that's the launch of a campaign where from that day until they actually give the decision that we're going to continue to be raising this issue, right? By talking about it in the media like we are today, by doing things like issuing the report that Black Voters Matter did along with Fair Fight that answers the question, what's the impact of this going to be? Our report outlines, as Roland mentioned, there's 19 specific seats that are specifically protected by the Voting Rights Act that would be lost if the Voting Rights Act goes down and these red states redistrict. And then there's some other states, like we said, up to 33 that could also be impacted. So that's part of the strategy, right? Just pushing back and staying engaged and pushing the narrative on the importance of the Voting Rights Act and the importance of this case, right? There's also the electoral piece, because at the end of the day, there are still some electoral options that we have to hold on to the seats that we have, right? So there's that strategy. There's also the pushback in terms of organizing around this, whether it's organizing in red states like Missouri, because keep in mind, they have a petition going right now to get enough signatures so that the people of Missouri can vote on the redone maps that the Missouri legislature just voted. So it's not a done deal if we support those groups and those community members that are doing that organizing. If you know somebody in Missouri, or if you could go to our page and you could find out about who's doing what work in states like Missouri, because we got to support that process the same way that we got to support the vote in California. And then the last thing is, like I said, we've got to be having discussions around what's the next thing, right? What's the thing that we do if the Voting Rights Act is taken apart? What are the other structural changes that we have to be talking about? Those are conversations that we got to have, because most folks in our community, we don't know anything about any other way to even do representation, because we don't pay attention to what goes on in others. There are systems that are used in other states, like South Africa, that the U.S. encourages someplace there to protect white minority that they would never even consider in doing within the United States itself. We got to have some conversations and raise awareness and do some education around what the other options and tools are that go along with trying to protect the Voting Rights Act.
Congo.
Thank you so much, Cliff, for all you continue to do. It's so respected and necessary. I want to know what your thoughts are. In addition to the work that we must continue to do, we never let our guard down. Do you feel like there's any possibility that these redistricting can backfire on Republicans given the way Trump is dealing with the economy right now? I mean, they're having so many FAFO moments that they may still just decide to vote for Democrats regardless of who they get redistricted to.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point because we were already seeing some of that possibly in Texas because, again, to create those 5 extra seats that they created, they had to move some stuff around. And basically what they are assuming is that Latino voters, this is what the math that they were doing. They said, wait a minute, this last election in Texas in 24, you saw more Latinos voting for Trump. So we feel like that we can do this redistricting, take power away from black folks, maybe even keep some of those Latino districts intact, and we'll be okay. But what they're also seeing is that his popularity and the Republicans' popularity within those same Latino communities is plummeting. And so it could come back to haunt them, whether it's in Texas or in Missouri or any of these other states, because at the end of the day, they're basing it on some assumptions that are simply no longer true. So there's a possibility of that. And again, we need to be doing whatever we can in coalition with some of these other communities to make sure that, we need to push that and to have, they use divide and conquer against us ever since 1619. We need to do the same thing against them.
This is, again, I really need people to underscore what's going on here. They are banking for the Supreme Court decision. In fact, we talked in Louisiana, the state Senate, they voted along party lines to postpone the 2026 election dates.
Yeah.
The delay would give the state more time to redraw its congressional map. This is assuming the Supreme Court rules in their favor. Republicans expect to craft political districts more to their liking if the Supreme Court rules in their favor, where race can't be considered in the creation of the districts. The GOP Senate majority, made up entirely of white senators, outvoted the Democrats, all but one whom are black, 27-9. On Senate Bill 1, the bill moves the qualifying period for political candidates and the 2 spring election dates for congressional primary contests back by approximately 1 month. Elections scheduled for April 18th and May 30th would move to May 16th and June 27th, respectively. The delayed election timeline will create more opportunities for the Republican-controlled legislature to draw newest U.S. House districts. Now, again, what this is all about, Supreme Court, Cliff, has this precedent, which doesn't matter because these folks don't care about precedent, where when it comes time to draw, they'll may say, hey, it's not enough time for the legislature to redraw districts, for the voters to be notified, and then for them to vote. That's what this is all about. These Republicans, they lost to the Supreme Court the creation of the second black district. Then they said, well, no, let's now join. They will not recruit some white folks to say that the creation of this second black district brought them harm, which they never identified what the harm is, and they expedited this lawsuit. And the writing was on the wall when the Supreme Court asked for briefs from both sides over eliminating these districts based upon the issue of race.
Yeah, and keep in mind, like, as an example, if we go back to abortion in the Dobbs case, right? Dobbs case was heard about the same time as this case, but the Dobbs decision came out when? It came out as late as like in June or something like that. And theoretically, that could happen with this case as well, but because of all the reasons that you were saying, we know that we got a corrupt, partisan, no good Supreme Court that is going to try to do everything they can to work the timetable the same way that they did with some of the other gerrymandering cases that could have been decided in 22, but instead they delayed. Like even those new seats that we got in Alabama and Louisiana, that could have happened in 22 and not in 24.
Well, they froze them in place by saying, yeah, we know the lower courts ruled they were illegal, but we're going to freeze them in place and force for 2 years.
Right, so we know that this court is going
to... the 2021 Texas case is still ongoing.
That's right, that's right. So we know they're going to do whatever they can to play with that time, to play with the calendar, and that's what you see. Literally, you see a coordination strategy of the Supreme Court, which will probably try to move up its decision, right? What could have been months could be decided in a matter of weeks. So they're combining that with the strategy that you were just reading, where you got these states that are saying, oh, we're going to push back our stuff so it can give the court more time to do whatever it's going to do. They're literally colluding. They might as well just be in a huddle together, the Supreme Court and these red state legislatures.
And again, for all of these people who we always say connected dots, who don't understand what's going on here. What we're talking about here is power.
Yeah.
We're talking about money. This, we talk about who represents who. And see, this is the stuff, it grates on me when I'm listening to these yahoos who are like, I don't know what the CBC, they're trash, they're not doing anything. These people have no idea the role that a lawmaker plays in inserting language in bills and removing language in bills.
Right.
All sorts of different things. You don't even have to pass a bill to have a major impact on the bill because you sit on a particular committee.
Right.
What type of projects that you slide in.
Right.
And that's people don't understand.
Right.
So if the Supreme Court rules this way and you wipe out 12, 19, 30 black districts, we're talking billions upon billions of dollars.
Right. That's right.
That will not be going to black communities because they have removed those members of Congress.
That's
those black
right.
members of Congress.
That's right.
That is a fact.
Right. At a time when you're already seeing disinvestment in our communities, whether it's, again, from healthcare, from SNAP, from block grants, or whatever the case may be, Department of Education. And so not having this representation, none of the representation is perfect. You're always going to find something to criticize about every representative or whatever. But when you have zero voice, when you have zero representation, there's no scenario where that comes out to the benefit of our community.
And the last point is, when you also sit your ass at home and don't vote, you actually make all of this a lot easier.
That's right. That's right. And again, whatever your issue is, you don't have to be passionate about redistricting and gerrymandering. But if you're passionate about one of those other issues, then you need to be involved.
I ain't got to love the candidate.
That's right.
I ain't got to love the party.
That's right.
I ain't got to be in love.
That's right.
We ain't got to like each other.
That's right.
But here's what I do know. And all these dumbasses will go, well, it's like I'm choosing the lesser of two evils. Guess what? Nearly 400,000 black women, no jobs. That's evil. When you see the anti-black agenda that Trump is executing, that's evil.
That's right.
When you see how he is withholding money from blue states and giving money to red states, that's evil. We can walk down. So when people say that stupid shit, oh my God, I think I'm choosing the lesser of two evils, I keep saying, one of them is going to win.
That's right. That's right.
One of them is going to win.
And one of them doesn't care if you live or die. And that is no exaggeration. And that's the way that they're treating our communities right now.
All right, Cliff Albright, we appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
And y'all, this is Cliff's first time in our Black
This fly studio you got here. Look at Roland.
We do a little something. We do a little something. This is how we do it.
I see you.
I appreciate it. And also,
right.
folks, and I'll say this, I had no problem. Black Voters Matter has been one of the few black organizations that has consistently supported this show and this network financially since we launched. So there's a lot of people talk about how we need to work together,
Right.
we need to sit here
That's
and
right.
support our own. But y'all have been one of the few, so I appreciate y'all's support of the show. Switch. Come on, I'm talking to Cliff. Come on, thank you. My God, I appreciate y'all's support of the show. Thank you so very much. And we're gonna be real busy in 2026.
That's right. We love you. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, Cliff.
All right.
Nicole Cole knows the cornerstone of a successful life starts here. Virginia Public Schools gave Nicole an excellent education. They helped her become a small business owner, family financial planner, mother, and community leader. Now, after 4 years on the Spotsylvania School Board, Nicole is running for delegate to meet the needs of all students. As our delegate, Nicole will fully fund our schools, raise teacher salaries, and help graduating students stay in our communities. Nicole Cole for delegate. For us, for our future.
Josh Cole became a pastor and delegate to serve his community. That's why Josh is fighting to lower costs for families hurting from inflation and make sure we can all afford quality health care. But Sean Steinway has embraced his MAGA backers who support Trump's mass firing of federal workers and the MAGA plan to ban abortion with no exceptions. We deserve better than Sean Steinway.
I'm Josh Cole, candidate for delegate, and I sponsored this ad. In the military, I gave orders, and they went a lot further than they do around here. If there's one thing I've learned as a mom and foster parent of more kids than I can count,
investing in their future isn't a choice.
In Richmond, I'll fight for Stafford's fair share for our schools. Smaller class sizes, better teacher pay, and more vocational training.
I'm Stacey Carroll, and I'll fight to get our kids' future in order.
As a pastor, I hear a lot about trips to the doctor, bills piling up, jobs being lost. So as your delegate, I went to work writing laws that protect families, helping parents care for their disabled children, capping insulin costs, lowering prescription prices, and investing in our police and schools. I'm Josh Cole, and as your delegate, I'm working to keep us strong and safe.